Hello, welcome back to our discussion series. And My name is Bill Douglas. I'm the founder of World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, which is a global mind-body effort to educate the public about Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, science, because it's just life transforming. And so, where I came from personally was for 40 years now, I've been teaching stress management in uh, for the public through major hospitals, through some of the biggest corporations on the planet, prisons, public schools, special education, hospice care, just everywhere where I could get this information out. And so the stress management that I've taught, it's based on Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, mindfulness, and a bit of yoga practices that I've incorporated. So the big five mind-body practices that Dr. Herbert Benson said could prevent or cure 90% of the health, up to 90% of the health issues that we're facing, uh, uh, prevent or treat. As so it can really elevate the quality of life, even in the most dismal situations, it can be helpful. And so, like I said, I've taught through hospice care as well. But so my focus has been stress management. And that was one of the things that I decided that it would be a good thing to talk about right now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this with a quote from Buddha, and the quote is the road to enlightenment is paved with disillusion. And the reason that I'm mentioning this right now is because there's for those of you and all of us who are awake and aware and paying attention, we're starting to be disillusioned because there's so much information available now. We're all learning so much so fast, and we're being continually disillusioned. What we thought were institutions or political parties, and if you think I'm only talking about their political party, no, I'm talking about all of them, and I've been involved in politics most of my life. And but we're all becoming increasingly disillusioned with these institutions, healthcare agencies, you name it, media. We're finding out that places where we thought deserved our trust uh, turned out, not that trustworthy. And now, for a lot of folks, this is like a stressful event. All of us, really. It's a stressful event. Change and awakening can be a stressful thing, and that's why it's so important to have a grounding mind-body mindfulness consciousness practice that we can go to, because the world is going to be this is going to be increasing. We're in the midst of is we're in the midst of a great awakening. Like Buddha referred to enlightenment. So enlightenment, the road to enlightenment is paved with disillusion. So what we're doing is we're losing all of our illusions about so many things that we, had been raised to put our faith into. And so that's much less stressful when you realize that it's part of an awakening. It's the road to enlightenment. And so, one of the things that I've found personally, a great stress management technique, and that is to not uh, judge ourselves for realizing that something that we believed strongly wasn't true. And if we can let go of that, so that's ego. It's our ego. It's like it wants to hold on to beliefs or whatever that we had, even in the face of information that shows that it's not real. That we learn that it's not real. And once we let go of that, or the more that we let go of it, because we're all human beings, we never truly completely let go of our ego. But as we get more adept at just being non-judgmental and being okay with realizing, oh, I was fooled, I was misled, oh, I thought this about that. And it turns out that wasn't true. The more that we can let go of that being a personal condemnation that we were fooled or that we were duped or that we did something wrong, rather we can just look at it as it's just the road to enlightenment. It's the road to awakening. We realize now that that wasn't true, and just being okay with that, and being okay with truth tellers, because it's, I've had friends that tried to explain things to me that I believed in, that weren't worth believing in, that weren't real. And I'd reject them, and sometimes I'd get mad, when they were kind of shaking my view of reality. And I look back with great regret, because they were truth tellers. They were telling me some truths. And we want to, it's like the old adage, beware of who you entertain. You might be entertaining angels. And so that's part of the awakening, is realizing that, well, we don't want to go into that kind of, that fight mode with ideas. We just want to be open and be okay with realizing that something that we thought or believed or held on to wasn't really, true, and not judging ourselves and being more open to other people's information. And uh, and so the practice of the mind body practices, one of the things that it shows is that there is a part of our mind that automatically rejects new information. It's kind of a defense mechanism so that we're not like overwhelmed. But when we practice these meditative practices, it puts us into different brainwave states and brain function. And one of the things that it does is it starts to lessen that auto reject, so that we're more open-minded, is what it is. We're able to entertain new information. Now, that doesn't mean that we just automatically accept it or anything, but we don't reject it immediately. We open to it, we ponder it, we entertain it. It kind of filters through our different levels of consciousness, and then we come to higher levels of consciousness. And that's another thing that happens when we practice meditation on a regular basis. We start to think more in gamma wave consciousness, and that's a much higher level of consciousness. It's a multi-dimensional form of consciousness where we consider things from many different possibilities. So it's a much more elegant and sophisticated way of thinking, but it's real effortless. It's just practicing mind body on a regular basis, which is so good for us. And it gets to be really fun too as we get used to doing it. Now, if you didn't have a mind body practice, I'm talking Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, if you didn't have these practices before the pandemic and the lockdowns, you're going to find it challenging, because what these practices do is they get us to slow down. They get us to slow down. And one of the things that happens when we start to slow down is the first thing we notice, how much is our mind spinning? Once we let go of the external distractions and stop being engaged in, technology or whatever, and we go into that space, it's like our mind gets flooded with all kinds of thoughts and, feelings and stuff like that. And so what happens is, if we stick with the meditation, is that will start to dissipate. That'll start to dissipate because the brainwave changes actually start to change the physical structure of the brain. They shrink the stress and fear part of the brain physically over time. And so as we practice these things, we'll be in a more relaxed state, but at the same time, we will be more open-minded to new information. So we become more transformative beings. We're able to transform and evolve and walk the road to enlightenment uh, more easily, because we're not squeezing and holding on to things. And so this gamma wave consciousness is a much higher level of consciousness. And so then we're able to see things from many different angles, and see things not as dangers and threats, but just, dysfunctions, and things that, well, we got to deal with that, and not look at it like our world is falling apart just because our illusions are falling apart. And so, yeah, on this thing with the brain dancing around, the brain science, I spent years speaking to leading scientists on consciousness, mind body practices, and how that evolves our consciousness. And so, one of the brain scientists that we talked to, he said that when our brains are dancing around with a lot of different thoughts, that's when we're less happy. the brain shows less happiness. But when we're present and we're here and now, then that's when our brain shows the most signs of happiness. And so happiness isn't a thing we can grab, but it's a thing we can open to. And so there's a technique that we can do right now, and this is scientifically proven to work. So just do this with me. Just take just a couple of minutes here. It'll be real short. So if you've been having challenges with meditation, just enjoy this. Just play with it. And it'll show you that meditation will work for you, even though it seems impossible right now, if it is. And, there's different kinds of moving meditations, yoga and Qigong and Tai Chi as well. But this is a real simple sitting practice that you can do. And the science shows that it works. It'll work. You just got to do it. Okay, so now let the eyes close easily and naturally. And just kind of feel the eyes continue letting go. Feel the cheeks start to letting go. Feel the forehead and the brow just start to let go, and it allows space for lightness to start to kind of permeate through. Now, place the tip of the tongue lightly on the gum line behind the top two front teeth. And that sensation brings us back from the world. Just feel that. And then as we let ourselves fill with a full abdominal breath that starts from the lower abdomen, fills all the way up to the top of the lungs, we're counting in our heads 1 through 5. So, roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you can adjust that, the speed of your counting. You just fit your breaths. You don't want it to be laborious or anything. You want it to be very relaxed, very effortless. So we let ourselves fill with a full abdominal breath and we count 1 through 5 in our heads. And then we let that breath just relax out of us. Let our whole body, our mind, our heart, everything just let go as that breath relaxes out of us. And we continue the count on that sighing exhale, 6 through 12. So 1 through 5 in on the full abdominal breath, 6 through 12 out on the sighing exhalations. And we'll just repeat this a few times. So with every breath, just letting go, 1 through 5 in, 6 through 12 out, very natural, very effortless, just kind of feeling it happen. 1 through 5 in, 6 through 12 out. And as we get in the rhythm of this, we can kind of go into passenger mode where it's just like we're letting the breath breathe us, we're letting the counting count us, and we're just here to enjoy the sensation of it, not thinking of it in words, but just feeling the sensation. 1 through 5 in, 6 through 12 out. Let the mind, heart, our whole field just sigh and let go on the 6 through 12 exhalations. It's okay to kind of drift off. And it becomes as though we infuse with this lightness on the 1 through 5 in breath. We don't try, it just happens. We just kind of become light. And then on that 6 through 12 sighing exhalation, we just become this nebulous, undefined, drifting radiance. And don't worry about doing it right or anything like that. Just let go. Just enjoy the feeling of it. 1 through 5 in, 6 through 12 out. Good. And as we gently begin to slowly open our eyes, not looking at the computer or the TV, but just kind of soft focusing on space and just letting ourselves just kind of breathe and be. And you'll notice that the mind isn't dancing around as much. It's more present. And that's what the science shows. When our exhales are longer and more gradual than the inhales, and we're feeling it, we're going into heart-centered consciousness, we're feeling it instead of thinking it. It starts to slow down the heart, slow down the brain. The cortisol, stress chemicals are much lessened, and then we're just more present. So this is just a little taste of what's possible. And so, when you're learning Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, there's going to be exercises you're going to do that they're challenging. Like I said, when you first sit still, your brain just starts spinning. But if you just hang in there and just play at it, do it playfully. And when you go into a class, I'm a teacher, so I'm speaking from a teacher's angle. When you go into a mind body class, don't go in there to dump your stress on the class. Go in there to play. Go in there to play and have some fun. When I was learning karate, I actually got to study under the greatest karate champion in the world, Fumio Demura. He won the World Karate Championship twice. Only guy that did it at that time. I don't know if anybody's done it since then. But he was the Mister in the Karate Kid when Daniel's son was with Mr. Miyagi, and the shots where Mr. Miyagi was in the shadows fighting all the kids to save Daniel's son. That actually wasn't Pat Morita, the actor. That was Fumio Demura, the karate master that I studied under. And one of the things that he told us was he said, when you come into the dojo, you take off your shoes. Now we don't take off our shoes in Tai Chi and Qigong, but we did it in karate. And he said, when you take off your shoes, yes, you're taking off your shoes so that you don't bring track dirt and mud and stuff into the dojo and mess up the mats and everything. But he said that it's a psychological, emotional experience. He said that when you put your shoes outside and then you come walking in, he said what you're doing is you're telling yourself that I'm leaving the world outside and I'm coming in here to have a whole new experience. And so when you go into your mind body classes, go in there to play. Go in there to play, let go of the world, and then just go into an open state. And then just play along with whatever it is that you're trying to learn. And you may be good at it or you may not be, but it evolves as you play with it. So just lighten up on yourself, and then the class will lighten up, and the teacher will lighten up, and everything will go much better. And and let the teacher know, if you're having challenges with stuff, talk to them about stuff. Uh, Before the pandemic, people were a lot more open about these kind of things. Uh, and they would discuss challenges that they had with their meditation or whatever. And then you get a chance to address it because you had those challenges yourself, and then also students that have had those challenges. So you have a lot to share as a mind body teacher. And so, yeah, talk to your teacher. You can always talk to them after class, or during breaks or whatever. But yeah, don't hold that stuff back. Ask questions, and then that'll help you stick with your journey. And if you do, it'll pay off. Your life will be so much better, and it'll be so much easier to go through this awakening that we're all going through, where we're all losing faith in things that don't deserve faith, and we're realizing that the truth, the authentic place, is within. That's where we go to connect with the universe. And the science on all this is extraordinary and beautiful. One of the things that happens when we meditate on a regular basis is the empathy and compassion parts of the brain starts to get physically larger. And that's a really big deal. Uh, and then the other part of the brain, there's a part of the brain that is more active when we feel connected to the world around us. And then there's part of the brain when we feel more isolated. And as we practice the meditative practices on a regular basis, the part of us that makes us feel connected to the universe is more active. And the part that makes us feel isolated is less active. So just like muscles, things get stronger and stronger. And you come to realize, what physics and what science now knows is that everything is connected. I mean, it's amazing that these ancient yogic and, qigong and meditation masters thousands of years ago knew that everything was connected. But now science knows it. Quantum entanglement shows that, particles that are, they can be on the other side of the universe, but once they're entangled, they react at exactly the same instant. And that the British Horticultural Society said that the science is in that when we talk to our plants, when we have good thoughts and good feelings with our plants, when we're growing our plants, that it improves the health and the beauty of the plant. They said the science is in on this, and it is. The more you look into it, this isn't science that you're going to find in popular culture. That they're always looking for, like, science that's going to scare you, or or I don't know, agitate you, or I don't know. It's not this kind of science, because this kind of science doesn't make anybody billions of dollars. When we start to realize that our consciousness is really powerful and that it can profoundly affect the 50 trillion cells of our body and our DNA expression, and help, prevent or treat, up to 90% of the health issues, developing our consciousness and our ability to, affect the way that we think about ourselves, just like the British Horticultural Society said the science is in when you have these nurturing thoughts for your plants, it improves their health. And so it's the same thing with us, learning how to nurture ourselves and be kind to ourselves and not think of ourselves as wrong or bad, and especially now, as we're going through this great awakening, as we become awakened to things, the old systems and the old structures, they kind of try to make you feel ashamed or dysfunctional or something, like you should be fitting in, that you should just be sitting in front of the TV, just buying all the products that they sell, and, worried about what all, who all the actors or singers are having sex with, all that stuff that they give us with the popular culture. And it's all just, it's just spinning thoughts and distractions and all that kind of stuff. And so a big part of the awakening is realizing that, what that stuff is, and it's all just kind of spurious, shallow thought that just agitates us and keeps us all excited all the time. And so then, we start spending more time wanting to come back to center. And we had a United Nations a woman who had an organization that worked under the United Nations. And what they did was they brought mind-body practices to traumatized places on the planet. So where a people had gone through a huge trauma, they would come in and offer mind-body practices to try to help them, deal with what it was they were doing. And she said that their data showed that people who had a mind-body practice before they went through a huge cataclysm. Uh, when if they had some kind of grounding consciousness experience before they went through that challenge, they were much more likely to recover. That's what their data showed. And so, that's why I was saying earlier that it can be kind of challenging starting mind-body practice after the pandemic, because we're all dealing with post-pandemic stress disorder, and you can look it up and see exactly how it's defined. But it makes it what I've, because I teach publicly mind body constantly, and I have before the pandemic for 40 years, and then after the pandemic. And I've seen the symptoms of post-pandemic stress disorder, PTSD, and uh, and so it can make it more challenging to start practicing mind body practices, but do it. Just play at it. And we have a YouTube channel that has some free kind of introductory tutorials. They don't replace a local mind body teacher. Find local mind body teachers and patronize them. It's like they're a valuable resource on the planet. They need to be patronized. Instead of going to a movie, go to a mind body class once a week. It can be challenging if you didn't have a grounding in this stuff before, and even if you did and kind of got away from it, it can be a little challenging to get back into it. But if you just stick with it and just play at it, hold it lightly, get involved in local classes, you can go to our YouTube channel at Global Transformation Project, Bill Douglas Tai Chi. If you search that on YouTube, you'll find the channel. You can subscribe to it. It's all free. It's got tutorials and a lot of information on diet and stress, saunas, all kinds of things that we've found, that can really transform our lives and transform our students' lives as well. And so because I've been in the, teaching in the public, I've seen PTSD and its effects, and how it makes it much more challenging for people to be introduced to mind body. And so in the beginning, after the pandemic, almost all my students, my classes, they weren't nearly as big as before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, what kept them from falling apart completely was that I had so many students who had been involved before the pandemic, and so they were able to come back and keep a core, enough to keep the classes going. And now, little by little, we're starting to get more new people in. And yeah, get that grounding, and then it'll be so much easier to go through this mass awakening that we're going through. And we won't feel like the world is falling apart. Now, if you watch the news a lot, the corporate media, the mainstream, legacy media, or whatever you want to call it, it's fear-based. And there was I've collected the science on this. I have a book. It's called The Gospel of Science, second edition, and it's 700 pages of collected science. The Gospel of Science, mind-blowing new science on ancient truths to heal our stress lives and planet. And it's profound new science on the power of your mind. And it gets into some really, really amazing science. And in the book, I have data on mass media, and what they've discovered is that if the programming gets us agitated or angry, it releases stress chemicals. And then the stress chemicals, they give you kind of a high, kind of like an amphetamine high. You get all that, adrenaline pumping through you. And then we get addicted to that, and then we keep coming back. And so all the corporate media knows how that works, and they use that algorithm, fear cells kind of thing. And in fact, after I had written the book and collected that science on how the media affects us, creating stress in us, chronic stress in us, then I also came across a video where a CNN executive had been caught saying, "Fear sells, we sell fear." He didn't know he was on camera when he said it. But yeah, so that puts it pretty much in a nutshell. If it bleeds, it leads. We've all heard that before. And so, if we're watching the media on a regular basis, and that includes, being looking on the phone at the stories and stuff, or the computer or whatever, it's all the same. There's only like five companies that own all the media. Everything that you read, see, hear in any kind of corporate media, it all comes from, five sources, and they're all very similar. And so if we watch that a lot, uh, it'll cause chronic stress, and that'll diminish our health, because stress is what causes, up to 90% of the health issues that we face. Chronic unmanaged stress, that's what becomes the organic dysfunction over time. If we just realize how the game is played, that they're selling fear, then we can start to play the game instead of being played by the game. And finding a mind-body core and practice, and then getting immersed in that, and also nature. Nature is very grounding. It offers kind of a meditative type experience as well, and not being so plugged into the media all the time. That'll really help. And then when I do look at media, I look for information-based media. So I watch several sources on YouTube. There's some great dependable sources. Chris Hedges gives you some great insights on what's going on in the world. He was a New York Times Pulitzer Prize winning writer, but they won't let him on corporate media anymore because, he gives information that isn't kind of allowed on corporate media. And then there's other people. Seymour Hersh, he's another Pulitzer Prize winning writer that you'll find on YouTube. Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald got a Pulitzer Prize. I think he was writing for the UK Guardian at the time. And anyway, he's got a great YouTube channel. And The Gray Zone is a great media source. But what's great about them is they offer information. They don't offer hyperbolic people yelling at each other like you get on the corporate media all the time. And and you get a lot of information that you just don't get on corporate media. And so I do look for information now, but to be honest with you, I went through a period where I just gave up all exposure, all exposure. Because during the lockdowns, I was doing what everybody was doing. My classes got shut down, and we were all watching the news, constantly because we were kind of led to believe that if we didn't watch the news constantly, there was going to be some new development and we were all going to die the next day. And, it's like they pumped it all up like that, and it was all overblown. You can, I actually asked Grok about this, and I'll put it on the screen whenever this video shows. But yeah, the we were all plugged into the corporate media, like 24, or whenever we were awake. And a lot of people still are. They still haven't gotten out of that. A lot of some of my students, it's like they watch that stuff religiously. And I encourage them to do what I did, which is I just walked away. I just walked away from all of it. I stopped watching TV. I stopped reading newspapers. I stopped reading news on the internet. I started doing a lot of meditation, a lot of Tai Chi, a lot of Qigong yoga, mindfulness practices. Started going to the sauna a lot. Started exercising more, getting out in nature, being in nature, going into that meditative state on a regular basis. And I started feeling so much better, and my health just started improving dramatically. I mean, I'm almost 70 years old right now, and I'm probably stronger than I've ever been in my life. And no pharmaceuticals or anything like that. And and it's all mind body. It's the mind body practices. And then also, like I said, I just got away from, all that media intrusion into our lives, all that technology stuff. Now, we have two websites. We have World Tai Chi Day and the Global Transformation Project websites. And we have 5,000 Facebook friends. And, we have thousands of social media contacts and connections. But that's all to get the mind body information out there. So we're not sitting there immersing in it. Now, I did go through that when it first came out, where you just spend hours on there arguing with people. Now, I do share information, but I don't argue. I'll just share information. I'll share a link to to an article or a video or whatever, that's educational on a certain level, and then let people, do whatever they want to with it. But I don't spend hours there, trying to debate things like I used to. It's just a sucking hole. It just pulls your energy down into it. And so I use it when it's useful, but then I try to get away from it. I try to get into nature, try to get into that center in consciousness. And so all these things will be tremendously life transforming. And again, saunas, I mentioned saunas. I can't overemphasize how incredibly beneficial saunas were for me. And I've been practicing mind body for 40 years. And they make my mind body practices work even better. It releases just tons of endorphins when you're in that, being exposed to that intense heat. Now, when I first started doing saunas, I could only stay in there for 5 minutes. So if you try saunas and you just go, oh my God, I can't handle this, just handle it for as long as you feel comfortable handling it. So if it's five, like with me, if it's 5 minutes, do it for 5 minutes. Just be there, feel the sweat, and just do it for 5 minutes, and then leave. And then when you come back, just keep coming back for 5 minutes. But what'll happen is that 5 minutes will start to turn into 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you won't feel any more discomfort. You'll feel less discomfort than you did that first 5 minutes because your body's going to start acclimating. And one of the things that's happening is your arteries and your veins and your capillaries. It's kind of the equivalent of getting a workout, but in a real relaxed way. And so your capillaries and arteries and veins, they're getting exercised. It's like those capillaries are opening, to let more blood flow go through as your body heats. And then there's this debate that goes on in your mind where, part of your mind is going, oh my God, it's too damn hot in here. I got to get out. And then another part of your mind is going, wait a minute, Bill, this is good for us. Let's breathe and just feel ourselves sweat. Let's enjoy this. And so you have this debate going on, and that's what releases all those tons of endorphins. And those endorphins, that's one of the best antidepressants on the planet, is to get a sauna. And that endorphin increase, that lasts for 72 hours, 3 days after you do your saunas. So if you sauna several times a week, you're going to have many more endorphins. If you're on any kind of like anxiety or medications for that, I always tell people, I teach in hospitals all the time. I always tell people never change your medications based on anything that I say, but you can use what I say to research, and then you can share that research with your doctor. And then what you may find is that you may be able to start reducing or eventually eliminate the need for these anxiety or depression uh, pharmaceuticals that you're on. But again, never adjust it without being in conjunction with your doctor. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I've seen in my hospital classes, I've seen so many people, so many students, no longer need different kind of pharmaceutical therapies. But I was always telling them, make sure you let your doctor know and do it in conjunction with your doctor so that don't do anything on your own like that. But if you do these saunas on a regular basis, that endorphin release will really help with your mind body practice because you'll those endorphins will calm you down. Your mind won't be spinning, and you'll be able to meditate or do yoga or do Tai Chi or do Qigong or mindfulness much easier, and it'll be much more fun and much more beneficial. So try saunas. And now another thing is don't let yourself get dehydrated in there. I did that once. So what I always do now is before I go to the sauna, I drink two really huge big tumblers of water. I just drink two of those, and then I go do my sauna, and then I try to remember to get a drink afterwards as well. And so, yeah, so we can age in a much greater state of well-being and not have to get this lifetime of pharmaceuticals because that's one of the things that we also get from corporate media is we get these 24/7 pharmaceutical ads, and uh, they make it seem like they can just fix everything. And all you've got to do is, if you haven't been through it, is just talk to some people who use this and and find out, how it really goes. There's a book called Sickening by one of the top doctors in the country, and he kind of broke ranks. And he said that in those pharmaceutical ads, he said that the benefits are vastly overstated in many cases, and he said the side effects are vastly understated in many cases. And so, but we get this idea when we watch those ads over and over again. And there's only two countries in the world that allow that. In fact, it wasn't legal in the United States up until I think the 90s. And the United States and New Zealand are the only countries that allow these pharmaceutical ads on TV. Because all the other countries realize it's crazy. They should be going to their doctors and, having an educated conversations, not being manipulated by advertising media. But we get this idea in our heads that we don't have to pay any attention to anything about our lives or how we live our lives or, how we eat or, drink or water or do anything. We just, if something goes haywire, we just go down and get a pharmaceutical and it's going to fix everything. And so it's like a program that we get from the mass media. And it's just not the case. In most situations, if we become more knowledgeable, about diet and hydration and mind-body practices, especially, it's like that's right at the core of all this stuff because our consciousness is the field from which all the cells in our body are being reborn. So we have virtually a whole new body every 7 years. So our body's being constantly reborn and reconstructed. So why does it keep getting reborn and reconstructed in dysfunctional ways if we have a chronic illness? It's because the stress causes distortion, and just like a radio signal gets distorted because of the chronic stress, it's like agitation. And so when we practice these mind-body practices on a regular basis, and we start to learn how to calm and have space and just feel and open and enjoy the experience of our being without feeling like we're rushed or that the world's coming to an end. And we do that on a regular basis. That's going to clear the circuits so that all these, like for example, some of the research on Tai Chi, but it's also true of yoga and meditation and mindfulness, is our immune system gets profoundly boosted. In one of the Tai Chi studies, I believe it was UCLA, and what they did was they were looking at people's T cell counts, and they had a Tai Chi group and then a control group. And the Tai Chi group had produced 50% more T cells than the control group. And that's a huge thing. T cells consume virus, bacteria, and tumor cells. They're just going around the body. They're like security guards. And so the more of them you have, the better. And now there was another study in Europe, and in that study, the Tai Chi group boosted their T cell counts by 100%. So these are massive changes that these that these things can do. And so the state of our consciousness, it was really exposed by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who was like kind of one of the forefathers of epigenetics. Everybody's heard about that, about how our genes can be affected by our environment. And in his case, his work has become consciousness because that's the main environment of our DNA expression. And so our DNA is being born in that environment. You know, the new cells are being born in this environment of our consciousness. And so the more that we can go into what science is calling coherent states of consciousness. Now, alpha brainwave state, that's the meditative state. When you go into a real deep meditative state, then you're going into alpha theta state. But then when you meditate on a regular basis, like I was saying, then you start to think more in gamma wave consciousness, which is a higher level of consciousness, a more elegant, sophisticated form of consciousness. And so these changes in our brain, it affects the whole energy field of the body where everything is being born from. And so that's why, in a lot of my hospital classes, I've seen people, no longer need hypertension meds or pre-diabetic meds or insulin or, whatever, or maybe just needing their body just needs way less of it than it used to need. So much less side effects, right? If you're able to reduce your dosages. And so that all comes from the consciousness. That's what Dr. Bruce Lipton, his research as a cell biologist, discovered was that we're more affected by the environment of our DNA or the consciousness field of our DNA than we are by the programming of our DNA code. Because what they used to think was that if your parents or grandparents, if you had a family history of some disease, you were going to get it or you're real strong likelihood that you're going to get it. But Dr. Lipton's research, it started to point to the realization that our state of consciousness had a much more profound effect on that than our past programming did on how our DNA expressed. Because the DNA is like a whole bunch of switches and triggers. And if one of them, if some of them get tripped this way, then your health is glowing. If some of them get tripped this way, then you have that disease that maybe some of your ancestors had. But the consciousness could profoundly affect which cells, which switches flipped. And so that was a huge breakthrough. And so that was another thing that I mentioned a moment ago was that if we have a really dismal picture of the world, then that's going to put us in kind of a state of chronic panic. And that's one of the things that I've come to realize, as I've been teaching mind body and, just trying to keep up on what's going on in the world is, and how the media works is that, for example, in the Gospel of Science New Second Edition, one of the things that I put in there was I put in the FBI data that shows that violent crime rates are at near 40-year lows. They've been falling precipitously for 40 years. And I also have data in there from the United Nations, which shows that this isn't just the United States. It's happening in many countries around the world. Violent crime rates are at decade lows all over the world. And part of the reason, maybe get into the science later, part of the reason is because of mind-body practices. The science shows that mind-body practices actually they create greater coherence in consciousness, not just for the meditators, but for the society around them. And so that can explain this unexplainable drop in violent crime rates around the planet. But on the stress levels thing that I was mentioning, is that if we think that the world is more dangerous and more violent than it is, then that triggers the stress chemicals that cause us to keep coming back to the media, because the media gives us the impression that violence is just out of control and the world is just kind of like a near apocalyptic level, where if just something bad happened, everybody turned into animals, like all those shows that people watch, the zombie apocalypse shows, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the data shows. I mean, I was shocked when I saw the violent crime rates are at 40-year lows. And I thought, man, I must be getting this wrong, and I kept researching it. And then I found, I got a graph and I put it in the book so that everybody could see what I was talking about. But yeah, it's so ingrained in us that everything's just out of control, getting worse on, societal malaise that we're sinking into. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And the planet Earth is vastly less violent than it's ever been before in human history. And I know, if you watch the news, you may be just like I was. I thought the same thing. I would have thought if somebody said that, they were nuts, that they were living in some la la land. But no, the reason that it seems is because more violent, the world seems more violent, is because anytime there is an act of violence anywhere on the world, it comes through this media machine to our eyes. And so we're getting bombarded with these images of violence, which are diminishing. Diminishing. People are becoming less violent around the planet and less conflict oriented. And so, yes, we see the violence that happens and we see it 24/7 on our TV. But what we don't see is that the rest of the planet is becoming more kind, more connected, more compassionate, less violent. The mind-body practices really are at the core of this. I had a chance to teach at Folsom Prison many years ago, and they had a meditation group, a Tai Chi Chug group that had been there going for 2 years. And during that time, it improved the behavior rates, not just for their meditation group, but for the entire prison at Folsom. And this has been replicated in cities and prisons and institutions where just a tiny small fraction of the population practicing mind-body practices improves the behavior or dramatically reduces the violent crime rates for those cities or whatever. And so there's a really beautiful thing unfolding around the planet, but they don't show it on the news because it doesn't generate the stress chemicals. And so it's like when you see the graph, the FBI data, you'll see how how the violent crime rate's been dropping. But then there may be a little tick up, 1 year, and the headlines that you see in the media is, oh, violent crime increased this much over last year. It sounds really alarming. But what they don't tell you is it's at a 40-year low. Yeah, it ticked up a little bit, but it's still at a 40-year low. And violence in the world is much less than it was. And so knowing that takes a lot of stress off. And then also knowing that, as people practice these mind-body practices, people like us, people like you and me, when we sit and we go into a coherent state of consciousness, we start to feel more at peace. We start to feel more connected to the world. We start to feel lighter and more open, less driven and squeezed and tightened and pushed and pulled and all that kind of stuff. And it ripples out. It ripples out from our consciousness. It's having a healing effect on the society at large, and in fact, the whole planet. And World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, after we had organized World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, about 8 years after we organized it, we found out that Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, they had discovered that human consciousness could affect physical reality. And then they realized that human consciousness could affect their computers, not attached to it or anything, just consciousness waves, or consciousness. And so they started creating these random event generators, and then they could see how human consciousness could affect it. And then when there were groups of people that came into coherent consciousness, like at a symphony or a opera or a cathedral mass or something like that, where people's consciousness was all in coherence around, that one thing, they could see it reflected on their computers. And then and then the director of research at Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, Dr. Roger Nelson, who wrote a book called Connected: The Emergence of Global Consciousness, which I highly recommend. And so he founded the Global Consciousness Project, and they put these computers all over the planet. And the first thing that they noticed was when Princess Diana's funeral occurred. And when her funeral happened, there were billions of people all over the planet that really, really loved her. I mean, she was a really beautiful human being. She was doing some really beautiful things, trying to force the big countries that, fight the wars in the little countries to remove all the landmines after the war so that the kids in those little countries wouldn't keep getting their limbs blown off for decades to come after that. And so, yeah, she was very beloved, and they saw a shift in their computers during her funeral. And so then they started studying. Well, I contacted them in 2007, and I said, we organized this world event where all over the world people are doing Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and meditation, mindfulness, because a lot of these events have more than Tai Chi and Qigong. It's a mindfulness event. And and so they said, yeah, we'll look at it. And then they never got back to me, and I just completely forgot about it. I got caught up. I was busy organizing World Tai Chi Day. But then when I started writing the second edition of the Gospel of Science, by then there had been many global mind-body events. And so I contacted the Global Consciousness Project, which is now at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, founded by astronaut Edgar Mitchell, which studies human consciousness, the power of consciousness. And so I contacted the Global Consciousness Project there. And I said, I'm writing a book. And I said, I know that you guys look at global consciousness and the level of coherence of global consciousness. And I said, have you looked at any mind body events? And they got back to me immediately. They didn't know that I founded World Tai Chi Day, but they got back to me. All they knew was that I was writing a book. But they got back to me right away, and they said, "Yeah, we've been studying a lot of these." And they had a big long list of consciousness events that they'd been studying, and right at the top was World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. So for all those years, I didn't know. But they said it had the data showed that it had increased coherence and global consciousness during the 24-hour period of World Tai Chi Day. And so had World Yoga Day, the International Day of Yoga, and also World Peace Meditation Day. And, I think said that there were hundreds of events that they looked at. And the P score of the shift in or the increased coherence and consciousness that World Tai Chi Day showed was 0.05, the P score, the probability score. And so that means there's a 1 in 20 chance that it was pure chance, but 19 out of 20 chance that something happened. We affected global consciousness. And so, but when you put all these studies together that they did over a period of 20 years, that P score starts to go up because they kept getting replications, confirmations of this uh, increased coherence in global consciousness when people came together in states of connection, compassion, and healing. And that's what all these things fell under. And when they looked at the whole 20 years of study of their project, the chances of it being pure chance was only 1 in 3 trillion. So we know that human consciousness is having a positive effect on the society and the world around us. And we're seeing the results of it in increasingly reducing violent crime rates around the planet and reduce violence around the planet. And so it's really important that we understand that because that takes a lot of stress off of us. And so now we know how we're being played by the media. So when you sit down in front of a TV screen or your computer news screen or whatever, and you get bombarded from corporate media with all the horror that's happening in the planet, you put it in perspective. And then you also keep coming back to your mind body practice, back to nature, back to your saunas, back to this mindfulness experience and this enjoyment of our being and our consciousness. And then we become these continually awakening human beings who are able to be more selective about where we get our information so that we don't get it from that hyperbolic, divisive, angst and horror producing corporate media, because that's what it's designed to do, because the data shows that's how they make their money. That's how they get more viewers. That's how they get more money for their revenue, for their advertising. And so we don't get played by it. And so we become more discriminatory and we become more sophisticated about where we go get information. Like I said, the Gray Zone, Chris Hedges, Seymour Hersh. These are John Pilger, the unfortunately just passed away, but he's a great Australian news person who's done wonderful work. So we start to become more discriminating and information based instead of politics and division and arguments and endless da 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 da. And they're bad, all that kind of stuff. The more we get away from that, the more we start to realize is that people aren't like that. The people that we were taught to think were horror shows, and I'm not talking about one side or the other. I'm talking about both. You know, I tell my students a lot of times, people that watch Fox News are led to believe that all their neighbors are communists trying to come and get all their stuff. And the people that watch MSNBC and CNN think that all their neighbors are Nazis. And if you get away from that stuff and you just start talking to human beings, about human things, and that can include social issues, what you'll start to find is that we all agree on a lot of stuff. We all believe that our kids should be getting clean water and clean air and being able to, have a working class life, where they can be able to get a home and be able to have a family and, have a future and, and a retirement or Social Security or, it's like people agree on these things. And, and most people almost, virtually all people are against war. It's the more you just talk to human beings, the more you see it's not this divisive hellscape that the media has created. And so the more we can get out of that and get back to real reality and start communicating with real human beings and having real mindful human experiences in our lives, all that distortion and chaos that makes it seem like the world is falling apart, it just doesn't touch us the same way. And the world is falling apart, but not the real world. The real world is expressing itself through all the cracks and crevices where it's coming through. It's the old dysfunctional world, the old institutions that no longer deserve our trust and probably haven't for a long time, but now we're just becoming painfully aware of it. Don't attach yourself to those structures. Don't attach yourself to this party or to that belief or to, whatever. Just be centered, be an open vessel, allowing information to come through, letting it be processed, not attaching ourselves to things, not gripping onto things, not resisting things, not disliking somebody for saying this, just considering things. And then we can hold on to it or not hold on to it. And so then what we start to realize is we become masters of the universe. And so there's a great relaxation exercise we can do right now where we can really bring this home. And so let's just let our eyes close just for a second. Just play with this. I know everybody's busy, but don't rush off. Just let the eyes close easily and naturally. Feel the tip of the tongue lightly touching the gum line behind the top two front teeth and feeling those cool waves of breath filling us from the abdomen all the way up into the airy fibers of the lungs. And then those sighing exhales, just feeling everything that we are, mind, heart, body, shoulders, just letting go. We can just kind of drift on that sighing exhale, letting the mind and the head and the brain just sigh and let go. There's space for lightness and an openness. Down through the sides and the back of the head, the base of the skull begins to let go. And as we let that energy field that we think of as the old brain in the back of the head sigh, all that panic and fear stuff that we squeeze back there just surrenders into the safety of that opening lightness. And the spine and spinal fluid and all the miles and miles of nerves being soothed and coated by this silken expanse. The sensory awareness lifting and lighting throughout our being and field, as well as on up through the solar plexus. And as we let that nerve bundle in the upper abdomen just sag as it sighs, just feel it surrender to gravity, just sagging again and again. Really letting go. And that allows space for that lightness to echo through the abdomen and the pelvic bowl, on up through the chest and the heart and the lungs. The lungs, the wings of inspiration begin to open, to lift and light. We don't make it happen, we just let it happen. And the bronchial tree, the upper chest lightening up on itself. And the heart lighting, lifting and opening. As we just breathe and let go, letting go of our hold on emotional states so we can just drift on whatever floats through. And as we breathe and let go, we're just permeated by this radiant lightness, like a sun above us that's just filling us and overfilling us with light, silken, nurturing radiance. The bones, the cells, everything just floating in that opening lightness, letting the mind and the heart just continue to open. Let go of trying to think or trying not to think so we can just drift in this light. And with the eyes still closed, just savoring this as we just start tapping our fingertips, keep the eyes closed, just tapping our fingertips and thumb tips around our calves, shins, and knees. So just going around and around the calves, shins, and knees. And the key to this is just let the whole body, the mind, heart, back, shoulders, arms, hands, wrists, fingers, just be so loose and supple that this tapping just flows through us effortlessly. And then we're just here in the day spa just to enjoy these soft, gentle explosions of sensation. So just be here and now. Let go of your rush. Don't worry about checking your email or your text. And just really feel this and really enjoy it, really appreciate it like we would if somebody else was doing it for us. If somebody that we knew offered to give us a tapping massage like this, we would really show our appreciation. We'd show it by enjoying it, just really feeling it as it just taps us in the cosmic day spa. Nice. And then up and down the thighs, coming at them from all angles. And those energy fingers are going right through the thighs and far beyond. And it feels so good to just let it in deep. And it's breaking up all the old and stagnant and rigid so that there's space for this unfolding radiance and lightness that we are. And it just feels good, just letting it happen. Nice. And then all over the abdomen, torso, and those energy fingers going right through organs, ribs, heart, lungs, thymus, everything. And it feels so good to just let it in deep. Get a nice energy finger massage inside our guts. And then just tapping right over our open heart. And those energy fingers are just going right through, just giving our heart a nice deep tapping massage. And we're just here to enjoy it. That heart-centered consciousness, just enjoying the feeling of it, opening. And the thymus gland, about halfway between the throat and the heart, just letting those energy fingers just go right through that thymus gland. And the thymus gland moves the T cells through the body, so it's a huge part of our immune function. And so we're just letting all that suppressive and depressive stuff in the upper chest just get shattered so that there's space for this natural inspiration and elation to expand through us. Nice. And then up down the side under the arm there, getting up into the armpit a little bit too, just up and down the side. And the lymph nodes are loving this. And us enjoying this, just reveling in this pleasure. Very healing state of consciousness. Science calls it gratitude consciousness when we really enjoy the sensation. And those lymph nodes just start shining in there. And now up and down the other side. And yeah, science shows this. It shows that when we really enjoy the sensation of our being, that mindfulness presence, that heart-centered gratitude consciousness, just really enjoying the sensation, that has a really healing effect on these 50 trillion cells that we are. Nice. And then up around the collarbone and shoulders, exploring all those little nooks and crannies, just for the fun of it. Like when we were kids and we do stuff, just see what it feel like, just for fun. And so it's not uncommon to hear Qigong masters refer to Qigong as a return to childlikeness. Just remembering how to enjoy these simple pleasures. We were so good at it as children because when we were children, we were in a meditative state most of the time. Nice. And then over a shoulder and up and down this sagging arm and hand, coming at it from all angles. And the more we let that arm sag, the more it lets it in, and then the more pleasure there is to enjoy. And that striking arm can sag too. We call it Wu Wei in Tai Chi, the effortless way. So it's like that striking arm becomes kind of like a wet popping towel. We just let it pop, very effortless. And then we're just here in the spa just to enjoy these tapping massage sensations. Nice. And then over the other shoulder and up and down that sagging arm and hand. Nice. And then over the shoulders, like thick raindrops falling. It's really soothing when we just let it happen and let it in. And then up those two rows of muscles, back of the neck, and those energy fingers are going right through the spine. So this is an extraordinary sensation when we're really present. And up into the back of the head and base of the skull. And as the whole field size, including the pineal gland center of the brain, just kind of letting go of control, this vibration just becomes the universe. And it's shattering all the old and stagnant and rigid and allowing space for this ever unfolding newness and lightness that we are, this possibility. Possibilities we can't even dream of yet, but we'll be open to them when they come. Nice. And then lightly around the throat, and those energy fingers going right through throat and thyroid are loving this. And us enjoying them, enjoying this very healing state. That thyroid just starts shining in there. There's nothing better than a happy thyroid. And as we get up into the face, it's so effervescent. There's just no limit to how much we can let the face slacken open to receive ever more of this kaleidoscopic pleasure. And those energy fingers are going right through jaws, teeth, sinuses, eyes, brain. And so as we play at this, really enjoying this kaleidoscope of sensation, it becomes increasingly apparent that things in our moments in our lives like this, they're about as beautiful as we decide we're going to let them be, or as meaningless and mundane as we decide we're going to let them be. And now the jaws slackening open endlessly and the ears slackening open with them. The face behind the face letting this in, just to enjoy it. Nice. And then over the forehead, and those energy fingers are going right through the third eye, the pineal gland, center of the brain. Feels good to just get this brain massage. So as we become aware that we can let moments just be really extraordinary if we just open and just be present and really enjoy it, that's how we become like I was saying, masters of the universe. We decide what we're going to feel, what we're going to consume, as far as like entertainment or media or nature or mindfulness, whatever, and over our brow and temples and forehead, skull and scalp. Nice. And with the eyes still closed, just savoring this tingly lightness of being bubbling through. As we just float into this field of nurturing safety and lightness that we're always floating in once we just open to it. Give it space. And we can continue floating in this silken lightness, even as when the time comes, we'll eventually begin to soft focus on anything but the computer screen or the TV or whatever, but no rush. Just letting the waves drift us back in our own time, enjoying the transition so that even as we do begin to become visual, we don't really fix or focus on anything, but we continue to open to this field awareness, this radiant, unfocused consciousness. Letting the eyes unfocus, letting the mind unfocus, and we're just here. We can feel everything, but we're just not focused. We can just float on that as we go through our day. Nice. Well, I hope you enjoyed these presentations. Please like and subscribe to the channel because that's the only way people get exposed to it. We don't get exposed in the YouTube algorithms, unfortunately. That's a whole big thing. And so the only way that people will find content like this is if you subscribe to our channel, if you like our videos, and if you share our videos with other people through your social media or whatever. And so that's what we do. We try to find treasures that are helpful to us and then share them with other people. And so that's what we spend all of our social media time doing is sharing things like this with other people. So we hope that you will do that with our videos because as people come through our channel, it's at Global Transformation Project, Bill Douglas Tai Chi. Search that on YouTube. You'll see our channel. And so that's what we do. We promote all the people who are doing this kind of good work. And there's no profit motive. Everything at our channel is free. There's all kinds of great tutorials, that like the one we did and many others as well. And not just the ones we teach. It's anything that we found. Yoga with Adrian, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's a real treasure trove of things. And then we also hope that you will go to globaltransformationproject.org. And you can also join our newsletter at worldtaichiday.org. If you just go to worldtaichiday.org, you'll see join our newsletter. It's all free. We keep people updated on the science, on consciousness, and these positive developments around the planet that are really exciting. But if you go to globaltransformationproject.org, you can sign the petition. And we're building a global movement advocating for a United Nations resolution that would advocate to public educators around the world the science on mind-body practice for education. And so what we're suggesting is a 1 hour a day, kindergarten through 12th grade mind-body class where kids will be taught mindfulness practices. And really, it's not like some strange thing, to be honest with you, because children are in deep meditative states most of the time up to like 10 years old or something like that. And then that's when they start to lose touch with it. So if we were exposing children to mind-body practices, and you can teach, there's ways to teach children. I've taught children at all ages, and I've connected with teachers all over the planet that teach yoga and meditation, mindfulness, qigong, and there's ways to, make it really playful and fun for little kids, and then it'll get more sophisticated as they get up to 12th grade, and then they will avoid, up to 90% of the health issues sending people to doctors. We'll save trillions of dollars year after year in future health costs. We can virtually empty our prisons when you start to look at the data, and we have a lot of this science and data at globaltransformationproject.org. So you can go there and you can sign the petition. And then we hope that you will share that petition in any way that you can, social media or whatever. Urge people to sign it. And if you're a mind body person, I know a lot of mind body people, they're mind body people, but they're not organizers. Well, I've always been an organizer, issue politics, human rights, these kind of things, for most of my life. And the only way that we can make big changes on the planet is to get this vision clear. Once you go to Global Transformation Project, you can see where mind body is being used in public education all over the planet already. And you can see the science that shows how we could be saving trillions of dollars, dramatically reducing violence, really creating a whole transformative experience for the whole planet. And it would all be beneficial and really positive, save tons of money, human misery, conflict, all these things that people deal with. It would be a really beautiful thing for the planet. And so, yeah, if you can sign the petition and then start sharing that vision, really educate yourself on it and start sharing that vision, share the website, share the petition, share these videos. And we can change the planet. We did it when we organized World Tai Chi Day. And there were a lot of people telling me, "Oh, you're never going to be able to organize that." And then, even if you did, what's it going to do? And then we found out that it changed global consciousness. And so we can't go into that mode of, yeah, it can't happen. Because that's how it doesn't happen. It's like when we just tap into something and we have that feeling, that lightness, that inspiration that we feel when we hear these things like, oh my God, the planet is getting so much better. And it can get even way better just by simply spreading mind body practices around the planet. And the science is in on it. If you don't believe me, get this book. Get this book. It'll change the way that you see everything, because putting all this science together changed the way that I saw everything. It was incredibly life transforming. And I'm going to show you some video of just one of the things that it did for me. Was that it had a massive impact as I collected all that science and saw what this stuff could do. It had a massive impact on me, and it got me to throw myself back into these mind body practices with a renewed awareness of possibility. That it could do things that were even bigger than I realized that they could do when I was practicing them for 40 years. And it just popped open something in my mind. And how that got evidence to me was when I started going to the gym, because when I was finishing the book, it was so intense writing all the, because it's meticulously endnoted. It's like a textbook. And so it was very overwhelming, intellectually and technologically. And so I started going to the gym to get saunas, to do Tai Chi, Qigong, meditate. And then I also started shooting baskets while I was at the gym. And I was a horrible basketball player in school. I never played it. I virtually never picked up basketball for 50 years. But I started shooting baskets after I'd gone through all this stuff. And I was in the gym shooting baskets one day, and this little kid walked up. Or no, there was a couple of little kids, about 11 years old. And I walked past them, and I heard one of the kids, he elbowed the kid next to him, and I heard him say, "Oh, hey, there's that guy that never misses." And I was going, wow, that's me. I mean, I didn't do that, but that's what I was thinking. And so the next day I brought in my phone and I videotaped myself shooting. I think I shot like 50 shots. I went home and I started tallying up, the makes and the misses. I was shooting higher than the NBA. The NBA practice average for free throws is 85%. Not games. Most of them aren't near 85% games. But in practice, they're 85% is their average. I was shooting higher than the NBA. A kid who was horrible at basketball. And it was all becoming aware of the science on mind, body, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, practicing it like crazy, letting go of that illusory, apocalyptic vision of the world that the media kept pounding into my brain over and over again, and just becoming more real and more open. And man, my mind body practice and the awareness of this consciousness science, it did something in my consciousness. And when I got home, I did the stats and I made 46 out of 50 free throws. And I was out shooting the NBA. I feel like Harry Potter. And now it's like now I'm shooting 3 pointers and stuff. And I shoot like around the NBA average for mid range, long mid range and 3 pointers. And I'm almost 70 years old. I'm almost 70 years old, you know? We're being sold a bill of goods on a lot of different levels in our lives, and it's all falling apart. And like Buddha said, the road to enlightenment is paved with disillusion. So celebrate this adventure we're on. We are in one of the most exciting times in human history, and we can make it be whatever we can open our minds to dream that's possible. So please go to globaltransformationproject.org, sign the petition, get involved, and like and subscribe to our channel and start sharing this information so that we can spread this reality based vision of the future. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I hope you really enjoyed it.